it's Sam from DIY Huntress, and today I'm going to show you how I transformed an overcrowded corner of my parents' home into an efficient home office space for my dad by building an L-shaped desk for under $150. Even better, I'm going to be sharing a couple of ways that you can save even more money on a build like this one, depending on what tools that you have in your workshop. Now, this build is just the very beginning for a much larger project in this space. At some point, I'm going to be transforming this entire space into an office and a mudroom. So if you're interested in that, definitely make sure to subscribe to my channel and click the notification bell so that you don't miss a thing. In the meantime, I am so stoked to show you how I made this project come to life, so let's get started. Okay, my parents are probably going to disown me for showing you guys the state of this room, so I may be up for adoption if this project doesn't work out the way it's supposed to work out. Okay, friends, so like I mentioned in my introduction, this project is just a small part of what will be a pretty big room makeover for this space at some point. My hope is to transform this entire room into a mudroom and a home office space, because right now it's functioning as a catch-all for everything and is kind of a hot mess. But in this video, we're just going to be focusing on how I transformed this cluttered corner into an efficient and smart home office space for my dad with a DIY desk and some awesome smart home products thanks to my partners at Xiaomi. Okay, so here's the game plan. L-shaped desk. Drafted up some super official plans. Check them out, check them out. They're gonna look something like that. Have my supply list. Time to head out to the store and go get some lumber. Let's do it. So originally the game plan was to build an L-shaped desk that had a shelf on the bottom to house some of my dad's new smart home products for his home office space. But unfortunately, the desk was actually a little too compact and that space was a tiny bit too tight for that shelf to be built. So I just focused on making a really sleek and easy and modern looking desk instead. Even cooler, I was able to make it happen for under $150. So the first place that I started on this project was with the two panels that I needed for both sides of my L-shaped desk. And I made these panels by cutting some pine boards into the dimensions that I needed for each side. And then I glued the boards together to create solid panels. Now, as always, you can find the dimensions for this particular project that I built on my website, along with all of the tools and materials, by clicking on the link below this video. Because these panels were on the smaller side, I did not have to use any joinery when gluing the boards together, but of course, if you're making a project like this one, feel free to use some joinery if need be. Also, if you do not have clamps that are big enough to be able to glue up panels such as these, you could actually attach all of these boards using pocket hole screws and wood glue. Whenever I'm doing glue ups for projects, I do like to allow those to dry overnight, so while those panels were drying, I moved on to cutting all of the pieces that I needed in order to make the frame of my desk. Now here's a part of the project that you can save a ton of money on. So I originally used 2x2 boards for the frame of the desk and decided they were a little too bulky for my taste, so I ended up trimming them down to 1¼ inch square. If you have a table saw in your workshop, you can make these legs using 2x4s and save so much money. This is a trick I learned from my friend Shara over at Woodshop Diaries, and it is incredible how much money you can save on milling your own lumber when you mill them from 2x4s. In fact, one of these 2x2x8 boards is $12, and if you buy a 2x4 and mill it instead, you're only spending about $6 or $7 for two of these boards instead of $24 in total. But for friends that don't have a table saw, no worries, because the under $150 budget includes these 2x2s. Since I actually purchased 2x2s for this project instead of 2x4s, you may just have to adjust your measurements in the plans that I have on my website if you're choosing to stick with the 2x2s instead of milling them down to 1¼ inch square. Ugh, I am such a bargain hunter. I'm such a sucker for a good bargain, and honestly, that's kind of where my name came from, but we could talk about that in a future Q&A. But in the meantime, back to the build. So after cutting all of my pieces and labeling them, because there were a ton of pieces and I'm notoriously good at mixing things up, I then drilled pocket holes in pretty much every single piece that I needed for this desk, minus the legs. But before I could get too excited about assembling the frame, I did then turn my attention back to those panels that I glued up because they were finally dry, and I removed them from the clamps and brought them over to my miter saw to cut them down to their final size. I also took time here to sand these panels and make sure that they looked the way that I wanted them to look, because I wanted to make sure that the frames and the panels would work harmoniously together as one build before gluing anything together permanently. So I get asked a lot if glue is strong enough for joining boards together for tabletops and desktops. And actually, here's a great example. So my glue line is right here, and this piece broke while I was cutting it, but it didn't break on the glue line. The actual wood itself broke before the glue gave out. So yeah, pretty impressive, huh? So yes, for an application such as this, I vote that glue is strong enough. Kept that little tidbit in there because I do get asked that question a lot, but as you can see, the glue worked great. Now, once I was done cutting those panels, I decided to finish sand them at 220 grit at this point since I was already working on them, and after I was happy with how they looked, I then moved on to assembling the base. For this build, I did actually end up making 3 legs or pseudo bases, and I made them by attaching some shorter frames to my leg pieces and creating 3 separate rectangles. And I strategically decided to hide the pocket holes on the tops and bottoms of this piece so that when the desk is assembled, you do not see any pocket hole joinery at all. And after assembling those bases, I then brought them over to the desktops and decided to run a full dry fit of this entire build to make sure that all of the pieces were going to fit before I permanently attached them together. Honestly, I know we all know the saying, like, measure twice, cut once, but honestly, I decided to dry fit this like 6 times and then put together once. I've just seriously learned my lesson the hard way too many times, and I wasn't feeling like doing that again with this build. Also, please don't judge me for stepping on my workpiece. I am working in such tight quarters in the shed shop right now because I'm in between projects and my shop makeover that I'm going to be sharing soon. It's just a hot mess in here. But anyway, so at this point, I had to put together the bases of this desk, and this is kind of when I realized an L-shaped desk would not fit through the back door of my parents' house, so I decided to build these 2 frames completely separately. I first started with the longer frame first since that one had 2 bases, and then after that was assembled, I then moved on to the shorter frame. I also kind of realized here that I drilled a whole bunch of pocket holes that I did not end up needing, but you'll kind of see how I fixed that a little later when I assembled in the space. Also, I'm totally aware that I'm throwing like a ton of different pieces at you, so if you are interested in a build like this, again, you can definitely find my step-by-step on my website along with some printable plans. It kind of maps it out a lot better and a lot slower, and you can print it and also have it in your shop with you as you're building. And honestly, I don't know what project scarred me for life, but here's another dry fit yet again because I was still paranoid that things weren't fitting together. Luckily, they were fitting together beautifully. But again, at this point, I'm kind of like in that mentality of, you know, the more that you dry fit and make sure that things are going to work before you permanently glue them together, the better it will be for your mental health later on in the project. And as a full-time psychologist, I fully support positive mental health practices. But after dry fitting for like the 1000th time, I then began to assemble the second part of this L-shaped desk and began to start to dry fit that to the other side as well. I started by adding an extra support at the end since there is no additional leg on this part of the desk. And then once that was there, I then drilled in all of the supports. Now I'm going to be assembling this to the other part of this desk once I move inside, so you'll see this a little better later. But essentially, once I was happy with the fit, I then added the supports in the middle of the frames to help support those desktops. And I actually also took some time here to pre-drill some holes into the undersides of these supports because I'm going to be attaching the desktop to them later during the installation process. After assembling the base, I just finished sanded all of my pieces and then set up like a pseudo spray booth in my workshop because I have a heater running in here. It's just been way too cold outside to spray. And I then sprayed the base using a primer first and then used about 2 or 3 coats of a paint after that, making sure to lightly sand in between each coat. I also actually stained the desktops, but obviously in true Sam fashion have no idea what happened to that footage, but I know that you guys know what staining wood looks like, so you're gonna have to trust me on this one. I then let everything dry for a while, and while those pieces dried, I moved on to organizing my dad's office space. I guess my mom was like super embarrassed that I shared with you guys this, so she already started packing things away, which makes my life easier, but I'm gonna start clearing out some more stuff. And like I mentioned earlier, this space is just a catch-all, so there was a lot of stuff. I want to put together a model car. We could sponsor a Little League team with all these bats. So luckily, I had redone my mom's office space a little while back. That video is on my channel, so there was a ton of storage in the attic and also in the closet of that room to be able to store a whole bunch of this stuff. But there are definitely a couple of important pieces that will be coming back into this space at a later date. Okay, here's what's gonna happen.
Is that staying or
No,
is that going?
That's gotta go. So I'll carefully bring the shrine down to you guys. I'm so scared to touch this. I feel like he's gonna disown me for even like looking at it. Okay. You guys, my dad's signed Saint's helmet is probably his favorite thing in the entire world. So yes, at some point it's going to be coming back into this space and I'm going to memorialize it in a different location.
It's a great dance.
But for most of the other stuff, like files and papers and documents, those are going to be stored in the closet of my mom's new home office because there's tons of space up there. Good job.
Hey!
What's the problem?
Where's my shrine? What you doing? Oh, she's ruining everything.
That's not garbage. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is about the extent to which my dad helped with organizing his future home office space. But in all seriousness, no complaints here. My dad totally gave me free reign to do whatever I wanted to with the space in order to make it more efficient and also a lot more decluttered. My parents do a ton of outdoor entertaining, and this is kind of that like entryway to the backyard, and because of that, they just wanted this space to be super neat. I'll definitely be tackling more of that once I complete this entire room renovation, but for now, focusing on the office space stuff, it just made total sense to only really have a desk back here with all of the essentials that he needed and to file everything else away. But circling on back to Build World, so once this space was decluttered, I then brought the two pieces of the desk into the space to assemble, and I assembled one side of the L to the other side of the L using wood screws through the supports, and then I also attached that bottom stretcher to the shorter side of the L because I was not able to do that in the workshop without it being fully assembled. I then moved the desk into its final resting place and brought in the two beautifully sanded and stained panels, lined them up and squared them up perfectly, and then attached them to the desk frame, first using clamps to hold them in place, and then I screwed them into place using those pre-drilled holes that I made in the supports that I attached to the frame. Luckily, my shop helper came to help me with this because obviously I just couldn't do it on my own. Luckily, after assembling the tops to the desk itself, I was finally able to see the light at the end of the tunnel, and I was able to transform this little corner into an efficient home office space for my dad using some awesome smart home products from today's sponsor at Xiaomi. First thing I really wanted to integrate into this space was some dynamic but soft lighting that my dad could set based on the mood that he was in while he was working. And I did this with the Mi bedside lamp too, which can be powered using his smartphone, which is also awesome because he sometimes leaves when it's still dark out in the morning, so he can now leave with the light powered on, but then turn it off from his car when he's leaving for work. Now, to help make this space feel more comfortable for working, I also wanted to integrate an air purifier into it, but since he is working in a smaller space, I ended up choosing the Mi Air Purifier 3H because it has a HEPA filter and is pretty small for how efficient and effective it is. It actually takes up a really little bit of floor space, but still cleans about 480 square feet. Even cooler, he can monitor the air quality in the space and also control it via an app on his phone. Now, let's be real, my dad definitely has products that aren't smart products, but I did still want to give him the option to make them work smarter. So to do that, I added the Mi Smart Plug to an outlet, which allows him to control items in his office remotely. He can also set a timer to control the plug, and it also has a built-in temperature sensor monitor, so the device will send him a notification if it gets too hot and will automatically cut off the power supply. So since this space is a catch-all, another thing I needed to make sure that he had was a vacuum since I got rid of his impressive supply of stick vacuums when decluttering this space. So I decided to swap them out for one Mi Smart Robot Vacuum Cleaner, which has powerful suction, which is perfect for dog hair. It's also a 2-in-1 essential for people who are busy because it is a mop and a vacuum in one, and even cooler, he can control it from his smartphone and power it on even when he's not home. And last but certainly not least, I gifted my dad a Mi Smart Speaker, which he could control using the app, Google Voice technology, or even manually with its smart sensor buttons. This thing is powerful and it bumps. Hey Google, let's reveal this home office space.
Let's do it.
My dad has been asking for an efficient home office space for the longest time, and I'm so excited that I was finally able to make this happen for him. I'm not gonna lie, it actually feels really awesome that I was able to build something custom specifically for my dad after he was the one who taught me how to use power tools in the first place. I really am so stoked to eventually get to this entire room and transform this space into a space that both my parents have been asking for a while. But for now, I'm really proud of this little L-shaped desk, and I'm so excited that my dad is really, really happy with his new workspace. I really hope that you guys enjoyed this video and that you will stick around to check out this entire room makeover at some point in the near future. And if you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe to my channel and click that notification bell. Your support means the world to me. And as always, friends, thank you for sticking around, checking out my videos, cheering me on, and just being downright awesome. Until next time, friends, happy DIYing.